this is the Sharepoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group weekly meeting for September 8th, 2016. I'm Patrick Rogers, and I'm joined by Vesa Juvonen, pardon me, both from the Patterns and Practices core team, and we're going to talk this week about the latest stuff in the Sharepoint Framework. Got some good demos coming up, and then a little bit of an update on the JavaScript core library as well. So what's the JavaScript Special Interest Group all about? With the release of the public preview for the Sharepoint Framework, we've sort of expanded a little bit more officially. We've been covering Sharepoint Framework stuff, but now we've made it a much more explicit part of the weekly meeting, which I think is good for folks that have an interest in that area. And so we've got a good update from Vesa coming up on the Sharepoint Framework and the client-side development patterns around that Sharepoint Framework and the public preview. We also talk about the JavaScript core component, which we've been working on now for, 6 months maybe, I think, and we've got a few little updates around that. And so those are our two main areas of focus now in the weekly meetings. And again, all of this is under the larger Sharepoint Patterns and Practices group. So as always, if you're looking to get involved, we've got two links there at the bottom. We'll have some additional links coming up. The first one is to our new community, which Vesa can jump in if I'm wrong. I think we've moved yet again to a new spot out of network.office.com.
Well, technically it's the same platform. They renamed the URL. I think it's the techcommunity.microsoft.com, which is highly confusing. Hopefully they keep on using that URL for now. So.
I hope so. I hope we haven't lost anybody in the translation, because I know I can barely keep up with where we're moving right now. So, but we'll get that locked down. But that link will remain good. We'll keep that updated. That AKA link will go to wherever the actual community lives. So that's one to save. And the second link there is to our GitHub repo, where we've got our source code. That's for the JavaScript core component library. That's a great place to get involved as well. And we welcome anybody's contribution from wherever you are in the world and whoever you might be. You're absolutely encouraged and welcome to join us both in the social aspects and the community aspects, as well as if you want to contribute code or submit issues or ideas as well about improvements or enhancements we can make to the library. So moving on, this week we're going to cover, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Sharepoint Framework, latest updates there, some upcoming guidance, things like that, sort of the open discussion around the Sharepoint Framework, at this point the public preview. And then, as we move forward, it'll be, as the releases happen, we'll continue to discuss those releases, new features that are added and capabilities there. We'll have a quick update on the JS core component, as we have in the past, though slightly condensed. And then we've got two great demos this week, one from Waldeck using Angular and the Office UI Fabric for Angular, which is another open source project out there in the world, and discussing how to use those things and how to use that with the CDN. And then Elio Struif, pardon me if I've said that wrong, I really apologize, has got a great demo of a search web part with some client-based functionality as well in the public preview. So look forward to those two demos a little bit later in the call. And then as always, we'll have our open discussion, open forum for kind of the ending part of the call. So anybody, if they have questions or comments specifically around the Sharepoint Framework or the JS core component, around your projects or things you're trying to do with the with the framework, things you wish you could do, things like that. Great open discussion opportunity, so if you have questions, stick around for that as well. So moving into the Sharepoint Framework, I'll pass it off to Vesa to take over and give us a great update on what's new with the Sharepoint Framework this week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Patrick. And on the call, let's say mechanics, one thing to mention, we do record these calls. We are planning to expand the audience within these calls as well, but obviously we need to get the traction ongoing. We're not, we're not getting hundreds of people yet participating on these weekly calls, which is one of the reasons why we're getting these calls recorded. So people can actually go and have a look on the demos afterwards as well. And we'll grow on that. This week has been super busy for us on random topics, so we didn't do a significant amount of marketing again on this one. But let's work on that, and thank you, Elio and Waldeck, already for the upcoming demos. A few things around the Sharepoint framework, which I wanted to pinpoint. SharePoint around the let's say the movement on that one. Before we go there, just to make sure that we understand where we are and what's the PnP relationship on the SharePoint framework. So first of all, the SharePoint patterns and practices, it's not really the classic patterns and practices in the sense of this is the academically fine-tuned only way of doing stuff. What we do within the SharePoint PnP is that we provide absolutely also deep dives code and deep dive samples, but we also provide getting started samples so that people are able to understand how to get started. We provide tutorial videos and all of that. So in some sense, you might say that the SharePoint patterns and practices is the community side of the SharePoint engineering. And like that, what the SharePoint engineering means in that sentence is that the PnP is owned by SharePoint engineering, so exactly the same people who are responsible of releasing the SharePoint framework. So, and that's the reason why we actually want to have this weekly discussion. So if you have any feedback which you don't want to put in the issue list, you want to rather mention that in the call, or you have a question which you need urgently an answer, these calls are for that purpose. So we can absolutely get those questions answered unless it's something which we can't talk about yet, but we'll be open and transparent on the messaging. Cool. On the SharePoint framework side, a few updates. Not as significant changes within the last week, but I'm going to reiterate some stuff which happened after the last Thursday. So first of all, right after the last Thursday, I think it was 2 hours after that, like mentioned in the weekly call, we went live with the dev.office.com/SharePoint. And that's the new SharePoint developer landing page, where we have right now SharePoint framework topics. Really soon, it's not a typo that the really is there twice. There will be information about the webhooks because we opened that one up for contributions. And then I missed the URL for the contributions are welcome. So the dev.office.com/SharePoint and all of the articles, they do have a contribute button or contribute link that points directly to the article in the GitHub. So if you find a typo, if you want to find a mistake, if there's something what you don't like, you can report an issue, or you can actually do even a pull request. And we'll go through all of those suggested changes within the framework. The other thing, what has happened within the last week, there is a new drop. I think this happened on Thursday as well as part of the release of the dev.office.com/SharePoint. So there's a drop number 2 on the SharePoint framework stuff. This did change or introduce some of the new capabilities. So Waldek is going to demonstrate some of that today. I think Elio is also demonstrating some new capabilities, or at least some areas which are touching the SharePoint framework. The release notes are right now in a GitHub. Most likely we'll move the release notes in the future also to dev.office.com/SharePoint. But what we want to do with the release notes is that we want to explain if there's any breaking changes, what are the key changes, what do you need to do for your existing solutions to make them work together with the latest update. And kind of a reminder on that one, so we are still in the dev preview. The SharePoint framework customizations are not meant to be used in production. Well, first of all, they only work within the dev tenants right now. We're looking into expanding that, so pretty soon they will be working in the first release tenants as well. But they're not meant to be used in production because we can't guarantee right now that we wouldn't introduce any breaking changes. So we want to make sure that the platform is stable enough, and then we'll make a proper announcement using the dev.office.com blogs and other social media channels whenever the stuff is stable enough to be used in production. We don't have an exact date for it. I can predict that we can probably provide some level of a schedule or a roadmap in the Ignite timeframe. So the Ignite will happen in 3 weeks or 2 weeks, well, by end of September. And in the Ignite, we kind of talk about slightly the roadmap for the SharePoint framework and more specifically for the client-side web parts. And that's kind of a slightly, well, I'm going to ramble slightly, but SharePoint client-side web part is just a small piece of the really the bigger picture of the SharePoint framework. And we kind of keep on releasing new capabilities, new ways of expanding SharePoint and customizing SharePoint. The client-side web part is just the first phase and first way of customizing SharePoint using the modern techniques. So more to come, much more to come. SharePoint Framework Webpart sample repository. This was opened at the same time as last week as we opened up the dev.office.com/SharePoint. So the SharePoint Framework Webpart sample repository is open for community contribution. So if you are creating samples, for example, something like Elio is showing today, the search webpart, that could be just as well taken underneath the official the SharePoint samples repo, and then we'll get all of these people acknowledged and credits within our monthly PnP calls. So that people are sharing their knowledge and sharing their samples to this centralized repository. The key thinking on that one is that when there's a new person who wants to learn about the SharePoint framework, the easiest way to get started is to go to one repo, pull it down, start playing around with the stuff. And we'll expand on the sample side quite soon. There will be more and more samples on that repo. Right now, we have one sample and the tutorials outcome in the repo available, but it's already open for contributions. And the final thing, kind of mentioning on that one, getting started webcasts in YouTube. So if you go AKMS SPPNP/videos, you will land to our YouTube channel where we have actually getting started webcasts. We do have tutorial recorded. We have videos around this stuff as well. The PnP video channel has also stuff for SharePoint adding model, because we absolutely understand that right now, today, you are already working in SharePoint Online and you need to have guidance for that one as well. So it's not all about the future, what's coming up quite soon. A few things around. I'll quickly gonna do a quick screen sharing. So just to show some stuff from the repo perspective, and I lost the Skype window. I have too many screens. Give me 1 second. Let's actually start up one browser, and then I'll start sharing. There we go. So from a repo perspective, just to walk that through, let me share my desktop and my monitor. So in the GitHub/SharePoint, and let's wait for somebody to confirm that you're able to see what I'm sharing. At least it goes to the recording. Okay, good. So in the GitHub, if you go to the github.com/SharePoint, this is the main location for the future SharePoint stuff. All of the existing PnP stuff, what we have, for example, in the PnP repo, is underneath the Office Dev, and this might be slightly confusing. The existing PnP repos will still remain. We'll keep on updating these. We'll open up the We'll keep on taking contributions on this side as well. But the new stuff around the SharePoint framework goes to the github.com/SharePoint. We don't want to kill any of the existing repos, so we don't transfer them over, at least for now. We're kind of debating on that decision. Right now, we have the SP DevDocs repo open, and the DevDocs repo is really around the documentation. So whatever you see in the DevDocs repo is exactly what's available within the SharePoint Dev Central, whatever we call this, SharePoint Dev Center or whatever. So if I click Get Started, I can see the SharePoint framework related information. Right now there's webparts. There's going to be information around the webhooks quite soon here, because that information is partly already visible in the repos. So if you actually go to the staging branch, you can see already information around the webhooks, because we have this branch publishing automated way of doing stuff. The key point here, just to kind of pinpoint, is that if you find an issue, if you want to contribute, if you find a suggestion on a page, you can always go click here and say edit in a GitHub, and boom, you land to that exact GitHub page. And then what you can do is just suggest a change or submit a change. In my case, the experience is slightly different, and we'll work on because I have such high permissions on these GitHub repos, but we'll work on the guidance on how to submit those changes and how to do submissions. Actually, if I remember correctly, never mind. We'll work on the links on that one. And the other thing what I wanted to quickly kind of pinpoint was the SPF Fx Webparts. So this is already visible, like mentioned. We do have the tutorial code available. So this is a one sample or solution, which is essentially the tutorials, which we have videos as well, ready to be combined in a single solution. So what you will have if you follow up on the tutorials, and that's going to help you on if you run into issues around any tutorial steps, you can always pull down this example, which will show how to get started. The other section in here, if you go underneath the samples folder, we are planning to start expanding this one. Right now we have one contribution from Waldek on the Angular side, NGUI Office Fabric to the web part, and we're looking into, well, we're open for pull requests and submissions in here. So we, in the same way as within the PnP side, we have samples and we have samples. We maybe have too many samples in the classic PnP. We're looking into kind of collecting some of the great samples what people are building in the new SPFx side as well. And maybe kind of a fun final pinpoint, I'd mentioned about the web hooks. So relatively soon, not going to say, well, quite soon, let's put it this way. We'll open up the SPDef samples, and underneath the SPDef samples, we have samples, and we will release a webhooks list sample. And this is essentially what we recorded together with Bert Jansen around the SharePoint webhooks. So we will release the dev preview for SharePoint webhooks quite soon, and this sample is going to be released at the same time, and then you're able to start testing this functionality. And this one, there's a video which is explaining all the steps how to get started and what does it do and all of that. Good. I'm probably not missing actually anything except where was the video. So AKMSF, SPPNP videos, and you'll land directly on the YouTube channel. So we moved our videos. I mentioned this kind of like 5 times already within the PnP calls, but there's always new people. So we're moving into our video portal from channel 9 to the YouTube, and from here you can find the latest uploads, popular uploads, monthly community calls, PnP webcasts, SPFx tutorials, sample videos, bi-weekly office hours. For example, these calls will be shared as a recording in the channel in the YouTube. And also old stuff like the, well, in quotes, old stuff, in production stuff, like how to use the PnP CSAM core component in the existing SharePoint adding model or using the remote APIs. Good. I'm going to switch back on the few slides. And yes, absolutely, JS Core. We should actually do a few videos on the JS Core usage as well, which is a good point, Patrick, to raise. So I'm going to switch back on the slides, and I think we kind of share, I'm going to hand over the discussion to Patrick. And Patrick's going to do, a quick point actually. On the opportunities to contribute around the SharePoint FX, like mentioned, obviously the easiest thing to contribute is to test the tutorials. The tutorials are available in the dev.office.com/SharePoint. If you find an issue, something doesn't work, you can report that using the GitHub tooling. Have a discussion in Stack Exchange or in the network.office.com. Well, nowadays it's the I can't remember the location name. Anyway, if you write network.office.com, you'll land there as well. Test the platform and demo your stuff in the PnP SIG calls, essentially in this call. We're absolutely welcome and open for suggestions for your demos. Submit changes to existing tutorials. That's open up, submit samples. Really, we welcome all of those samples in the official samples repo as well. And obviously, we are really open for your feedback. So if you like something, if you hate something, if you don't like something, let us know. And we'll figure it out if it's a messaging issue, if it's a technical issue, if it's a tooling issue, and we'll work on that. Because we really want to make sure that community has the needed guidance and needed information around the SharePoint framework. Good. I think that's it. Let's hand over to Patrick for a quick summary on the PnP JavaScript core component and the library status, and then we'll move into the SharePoint framework demos.
Great. thanks, Fesa. Great update on the public preview there of the SharePoint framework. I hope folks are getting that out, getting to play with that a little bit. And a great sort of tool you can use when you're doing your SharePoint framework development is the core component. So hopefully it makes things a little bit easier, helps you not have to remember all the little REST URLs and things like that. So encourage folks, if you haven't, have a look at that. We've got the GitHub link down there at the bottom, as we mentioned earlier. There's also an NPM package. We've released 104. We'll talk about that here in a second. And we've also got the Gitter, I still don't know what to call Gitter chat. It's not quite a forum, right? The Gitter chat area. So that's a great place if you have questions or comments around specifically the core component. That's a great place to sort of get that answered or get some feedback there. So moving forward, again, we want to thank everybody that's contributed. We haven't had, I'm privately viewing. Why take over as presenter? Can you move to the next slide, Vesa?
Yeah, I can. Or you can take over as the presenter, either way. Okay, I'm your lovely assistant. Just let me know. I'll. Never mind.
Oh, sorry. Technical. Am I presenting? Can folks see?
Yep, all good.
All right. Sorry about that. One of these days I'll learn how to use technology. So thank you to everybody that's contributed. Really appreciate everybody's work. As we've mentioned a few times in the past, if you would like your listing in the authors file updated to reflect a company name, maybe I've got your name slightly wrong, or if you'd like to add an email or a GitHub handle or something in there, please just let me know. We will make that happen. The least we could do is get you as much recognition as we can. I'm privately viewing again, it tells me. So everybody should see the thank you screen.
We are.
Okay, confusing. Great, thanks. So thanks to everybody that contributed. Without you, the project would not exist, and look forward to folks contributing in the future. So now we should see the Yammer and Gitter discussion slide. It's been pretty quiet this last week. A few small questions, and that's great. So I'm assuming everybody's using the library and everything's working very, very well. Again, if you have questions, hop onto the Gitter, let us know. A couple of links again down at the bottom around getting to the community and also getting to the Gitter. So that is, that's the way to really engage if you have questions. The folks, both myself and in our community here, do a great job of helping each other out. So really, like to see that, love to see that. So moving forward, what's happened this last week? We did get 104 released last week, and I got a blog post up describing that. It was a smaller release, but I think a valuable one. It incorporated some really good fixes in that release, as well as a couple of new methods, getting fields by both the internal name and display name, as well as the batch.execute now returns a promise that will resolve once all of the child contained promises of that batch resolve, so that it will allow you the opportunity to sort of, once all those promises resolve, perhaps you set a timer to refresh your data or do some other UI updates or things like that once everything's resolved. So I think some great updates there, and all of those came out, again, of direct feedback from the community requesting features. So love to get that feedback, love to see that feedback, and we're trying to incorporate as much of that as we can. I have gotten mostly caught up on processing pull requests and issues. There's a few issues still there. Certainly welcome help resolving some of those. But I think we're mostly caught up on that, and all the pull requests that were out there were included in the 104 release. So all of those did make it in. And I should mention, those of you that were on the call last week, Bill, during his demo, had mentioned there was a problem when packaging the JS Core framework in the the JS Core component within the SharePoint framework. That is also resolved in 104. So we got that fix in as well. So that should all be good to go with the SharePoint framework. So opportunities to contribute, write a web part and demo it on this call, just let us know. We've got, like I said, 2 great demos this week. Certainly look forward to more demos in the upcoming calls. So if you want to do a demo, all you need to do is write a web part, let myself, let Vesa know, and we'll get you on the agenda for the call. So we typically have time for about 2 demos a call. So, it might not like if you let us know Monday, you might not get that week, you might be the next week, but just let us know. We will get you on the agenda. We're really excited to see the stuff that the community is coming up with. And then sort of a plug for the library, absolutely encourage you to use the JS Core library in those web parts you develop. It's not going to get you in any sooner, but love to see that, love to see how folks are using the library. And I think it helps the community understand how to incorporate that into your SharePoint framework projects as well. And then the other opportunities are kind of the same. We've talked about testing. Let us know if you find issues. Report those issues. Folks have been doing a great job of that, and we're trying to get those resolved as they come in. Help writing tests, still working on that. And then, again, still looking for some help on styling our docs website. Had some initial interest there, and then not a whole lot really came through with that quite yet. So looking for folks that are really good with CSS and have some time and want to use the kind of handlebar stuff and get that working, certainly encourage some help with that, because I'm certainly not a CSS wizard. So that was a quick update on what's been going on with the JavaScript core. Now I'm ready for some demos. So let's, I think Waldeck is going to go first, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you're not.
Waldeck? I am not. Wow. So do you want to take over presenting, and let's see what you got.
Yeah, let me know when you can see my screen. It should be starting any moment now.
Got loading on my side.
Let's see how your Skype version is working right now. So
I got it.
Yes.
Yep, we got it.
Right. Awesome. So the one thing that I wanted to show you today, guys, or I wanted to actually talk a bit about, is the ability to load external scripts from CDN or any other external place when we build SharePoint Framework client-side web parts. As an example, I'd like to use the web part that you might have seen already, which is the to-do web part that I've built with Angular, and which I styled using the ng Office UI Fabric initiative, which is basically an open source set of Angular directives that implement the Office UI Fabric styles. So that's the web part that you can see now on the screen. But today, instead of talking about what the web part does, we will talk a bit about how it does that, right? So initially in the past, when the SharePoint framework has been initially shipped, the only way for us to work with Angular was actually to include it within the bundle. And that applied both to Angular and ng Office UI Fabric, right? So if we go to the code, which you can see now, let me quickly remove that, and let me build the web part. So I will go to terminal, which is basically command line, and herein let me call gulp bundle. And let me increase the font size so it will be easier for you guys to see. The build starts, and it should be done within a few moments. And the one thing that I'd like you to have a look at is the file size when we actually include both Angular and ng Office UI Fabric within the bundle. So we go to the Mac Explorer thing, and here, if you look at the files that we get 1.4 megs for one single web part. Well, obviously that doesn't really apply to the thing that you would ship in production, because then instead of gulp bundle, you would call gulp, let me zoom out a bit, gulp bundle dash ship, right? So that's the way we can distinguish whether we want to have debug build or production build, right? So here, whenever we call dash dash ship, Webpack will actually optimize the bundle, will minify it, and will remove the comments. So that will save us quite some space. And if we go to the bundle now, we see that it's 300K, right? But it's still a lot. I mean, the web part doesn't really do that much, and the size that we get is due to the fact that we include both Angular and Ng Office UI Fabric within the bundle. So that means that if you would add the web part, or you would have few web parts on a page that all use Angular and Ng Office UI Fabric, you would have that overhead for every single one of them. So that means that you would load 300K about for every single web part as overhead, only because of the fact that you actually embed these dependencies within the web part. So think about it in the context of a whole intranet, where you have quite a few web parts, pages, instances of them. So that way, you would basically have a lot of overhead to bandwidth that would actually slow the whole intranet down. So another way to deal with external scripts when we build SharePoint Framework client-side web parts is actually to load them from an external URL. And it's really easy, and the great thing about it is that you don't have to change anything about your code, right? The only thing that you have to do is to say that some resources that you use in your code should not be embedded but should be pulled in from an external URL when the web part runs on a page, and that's it. And at that point, it's actually up to you to choose whether you want to use public CDN or location where you store your files internally, right? So a place that you manage yourself. So the way this works is you do that by going to your project, then you go to the config.json, and here in externals, you add entries for all scripts that you want to load from external URLs. So in our code, if we go to the web part, we, for example, load Angular, right? And then in Angular app, if we go here, we load the Ng Office UI Fabric. So in order for us not to include them within the bundle, but to load them from an external URL, we go to our config, and here, let me put back the entries that I deleted initially. So here we add two entries, one for Angular and one for Ng Office UI Fabric. The key thing is that the way we spell these entries has to match exactly the require and import statements that we have in our code. So here is Angular, because here in the code, I have Angular. And the same way, because here in my Angular app, I import ng-office-ui-fabric, it's exactly what I have to say here. Right? And with that, the only thing left for me to do is to put URLs of these two guys. Right? So I say that ng-office-ui-fabric should be pulled in from this URL and Angular from here. And if you look closely at that, you will see that actually the way they are defined is not exactly the same. Where here I only have the URL, here I have the path and the name. And that has to do with the fact how that script that I am going to use is actually built. And it touches a bit to the thing that's called the module. So you might have heard that there are AMD modules, UMD modules, or non-AMD modules, and that basically defines how the script is built. So for example, Angular is a non-AMD module. So that means that whenever you would pull in that script and you would run that in browser, it would just attach in your global scope on window. So in Angular, you would get window.angular variable that contains Angular. On the other hand, the Ng Office UI Fabric is built as a UMD module. So that's contained within its own scope. So whenever you want to load external script that way in the SharePoint framework, you have to know what kind of script you want to load. And based on its type, you either only need to specify the URL, or you have to specify URL and optionally its name. Right? So for non-AMD scripts that attach to your window scope, you have to always specify the name, right? So with these two guys, we will now load both scripts from these URLs, and let's test that, what that will do to our code that we would ship. So once again, let's run a build, and that will take a moment or two. The last one took 15 seconds. That's actually pretty long. But it's actually, if you talk through it, it will be done in no time. And we should actually see the code now. And remember, first time we had over 300K. Now, if we go to the Mackie Explorer now, we actually have, yeah, I didn't save it. Oh, darn. My bad, guys. Sorry. Now you need to actually put up with me for the next 15 seconds. Sorry.
Always the same thing with Waldek.
Yes, it's always that way. It's like, yeah, so now you're going to see that cool thing, and then it's gone. So now, if you look at this now, we actually went down to 13K. So that means that we saved over 300K. Well, not really, because the web parts still need Angular and ng Office UI Fabric, and now the difference is that it will pull them down the first time you add the web part to the page. But here's actually the trick. It will do that, well, depending on where these scripts are stored. If they are stored correctly, these scripts would be pulled down only the first time user sees a web part on an intranet that uses this script. Whether they would go to another page, another web part that would use exactly the same scripts, these scripts would be already pulled in from local cache in browser that's already there, right? So the browser would never make the call to load these scripts because it already has them in its cache. So that way, we can really easily optimize the way our internet works and the way we build the web parts to actually improve how the whole thing works, right? And the best part is, it doesn't include from us any single change in the code. Our code is exactly the same. The only thing that we have to do is to go here to our config and include the external scripts, or actually specify the scripts that we want to load from external place as externals, right? And that does not need to be a CDN. It has to be it can be any place that's accessible to users. So that could be your document library, that could be your blob in Azure, that can be anything. Right? So as long as users can load scripts from these URLs, you're good to go, and you will be able to optimize your internet for performance. With that, I give it back to Patrick or directly to Elio.
I think Elio will take over from here. And while Elio starts the sharing, just a kind of one comment on what you showed on here. And that's a really good point. And obviously, we need to provide some guidance and documentation around this considerations around using this external JavaScript. Because it's really, really important that if you use, for example, Angular or jQuery within your web parts, you are using the exact same URLs. Within your web parts, because otherwise, if you have, let's say, 10 different web parts within the front page of the intranet, and all of them are randomly referencing whatever JavaScript files in the internet, the page size will get extremely big. So.
Yes, and actually, even then, that would be actually even worse because you would have 10 additional calls to another domains on the internet, correct. So you would have actually additional penalty out of that. So that would actually be even worse, right?
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And we'll work on the guidance on that one, which will go to the dev.office.com/SharePoint. And Elio, we can see what you're sharing. So it's an infinite loop. That's a pretty weird picture. But
yeah, that's what I feel. So.
Yes, but take it away. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So what I did with the SharePoint framework, I built a search web part. So it's basically simulating what the content search report in the normal SharePoint environment does. So here we have the SharePoint workbench. If I go to my web part, then it's going to load me some results. So it's going to, by default, load 10 results for a star query. If you go to edit this web part, then you have a couple of properties that you can define. You have a title, you have the query you can do. So if we change this to, I only want to have docx files, then we can change it, and the query changed, and you will immediately see all documents. So you can also change the number of results if you want. You can also do sorting. So like this, you'll see the sorting change, and you have a templating functionality. Now, I started from the beginning with an internal templating system. An internal templating system, I mean that everything is built from within the SharePoint framework. So all the templates are in the same project, and once you build it, it will become available in your web part. So here is another example. This is my. If I now specify a title, you will see that it will pop up. So that's great. Of course, if you're using this web part and you have different templates, like with the content search web part, you had the ability to create a display template, and the display template was just you just needed to upload it to the master page gallery. Once that was available over there, you could start using it in your application or in your web part. Now, to simulate this, I built something that can do something similar. If I switch this toggle, then I can say, okay, I just want to use an external template. And let me copy URL. So this is a URL to a template. It's not a real special one. You will see it immediately. Once I apply it, now it's loading the template from that URL. So this is loading inside my web part. And you can do different kind of things. Here is a template with jQuery in it. So it has a jQuery dependency, and it has also a dependency on styling. So it's just the same template, but here you see that jQuery updates the title, and it will put it in red, and all the links are in blue and underlined. So, but you can do other stuff. Yesterday I made another one. Let me do another query. I built a carousel. So if I put this query on, give me only JPEGs. So now I have only JPEGs. And if I this URL, you will see a carousel loading. So my refresh should be working again. So, and okay, it works. Now, how does it work? I put it on a quick slideshow. So by default, you have the web part itself. So it's the TypeScript web part file. In the TypeScript web part file, I'm going to check which type of template has to be loaded. So you have an internal or an external template. So internal templates, you define everything in the internal template. So if you have an external link or a dependency on a script or a framework, you can put it in the internal template. That's all covered from within the SharePoint framework. Of course, if you have an external template, your template will live externally. So if you're going to load a script, your SharePoint framework application or web part needs to be aware of it. So I built something in it that you can define which scripts to be loaded and which style sheets have to be loaded. So it loads the template, then it's going to check if there are any scripts or CSS file to be loaded. Once that is done, then it will load it. It will pass through the web part, pass through the element or the template to the web part, and the web part will load the element. So this is just how a default React web part in the SharePoint framework works. Now, once your template has been loaded, it loads the element. The element is aware of your templates, and then the only thing that needs to happen is retrieving the results and rendering the component. Now we can dive into the code. If I go too quickly, just shout. I don't know if there are any questions, but feel free to ask them. So here we are
just at this point, but thank you, Elio. I think this is good speed. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So here we are in the web part. So there are a couple of things that have been changed. Here we have the property settings. Nothing really special. The only thing that has been changed in the property settings is the toggle, that there is a check. Do I need to load the external version or the internal version? And then it's going to show you that. So what I mean by this is if you go to the web part and if you toggle this, you will see that there is a drop-down shown when it's off. When it's on, you have a text box option. So when it's on, the text box is for inserting the URL to the file. When it's off, you can choose from the internal templates. That's the property section. Then the rendering section. The rendering is all about checking if it's internal or external. So that's the first thing that needs to be done. Then also what Waldek has been talking about is the module loader. It's not using any code anymore, but here I'm using the module loader to load my external template. If it needs to be loaded, of course. Once it's loaded, then I get the elements, I check which scripts have to be loaded. Once the scripts have been loaded, then the element can be loaded. Now, here you see where the element gets loaded, and then we go to the elements file. This is built with the Flux pattern. Flux is all about unidirectional data flows. It's not only for React, it can be used in whatever application, but it's really useful if you're working with data flows inside your application. You need to get used to it, but once you get used to it, it's really simple to do. So how it works with actions, a dispatcher, and a store. So all your components can call an action. That action can contain something like getting or retrieve or saying, oh, I want to retrieve search results. The action is sent to a dispatcher, and the dispatcher will send that request to all the stores that are available. If there is a store that is available and that has that task, then it will pick up that task and it will retrieve or will do the task you asked it for. So here in my search SPFx element or component, I start with no results, and once my web part is loaded, then I'm going to get new results. So give me the results based on the properties I got from the web part itself. So this is being sent to the search action, and to skip everything, we jump directly into the search store. And the search store is nothing more than this. You see here an action, get me the search results. Here I build up the URL for retrieving all the search results, of course, like retrieving based on the query you did. So here I check which type of query you want to do. Then which properties do you need to define? By default, all properties are defined in the templates. You will see it immediately if I open up an external template. You can also define the row limits. You can do the sorting, and that's it. Once the URL is complete, then you will do the get search data action. The get search data action uses the context HTTP client, which is by default available from within this, the Sharepoint framework. Once that is done, it retrieves the JSON. You do some checks if you retrieve the correct results. And there's something really special here, setting search results. I'm not going to pass through every type of result, because if you're going to do a search query by the REST URL, you get more managed properties than you have defined in your web part or in your template. So what I do I reformat everything, and I will only give you the elements you want or the managed properties and the values you want from within your template. So if you want file the title of the file and the path, then your object will return as a result set of only the titles and the paths of your files you retrieved. So once that is done, then the store will emit a change, and this emit change is really special in Flux. Everything is based on that. So once it emits a change, you can put an event receiver or a listener to it in your component. So if you're going back to your component, you will see these kind of things. Search store add change listener, and also in the component will unmount, you have a remove change listener. So once there is something changed in my store and there is an emit change, then it will give a trigger to my element or to my component, and it knows that it needs to update its component. So once this is done, then it will go to the onChange. It checks which type of change has been happened. Is it a change in the properties, or is it a change in retrieving a new set of search results? And if this is happening, then all the new search results will be put in the state of that current component. And then we can go to the rendering of that web part itself. So here we have the web part rendering. And the only special thing here is these two blocks. So here we check if it's an external template or if it's an internal template. Once that is done, if you know what you have to do then you can just return that component, pass through the properties and the results, and you're done. So what does a template look like? If I just open a table template, it's nothing really special if you know anything about React itself. So you have a couple of functions from within the template that are important for the template itself. And here you have the rendering components. I load a CSS file, which is coming from the Office Fabric for loading the component style of the table layout. This is for showing the title above my web part. So if I switch this back to table, okay, so this is my template. This is my title of my template. This is what you see there. And all the results are being rendered from within this. Now, this is all for internal templates. As I said, you can also use external templates. External templates, I created these in another folder, which is not really part of the Sharepoint framework. I still need to build something for building or for creating these templates. As for now, this is still a proof of concept web part, so it's not production ready. A sample web part, or let's dive into the loading one. So here you see an object, external template. This is an object that always needs to be defined like this. So you have external template, and external template has two other objects, a property object and a component object. In these property objects, you will find key, text, mappings, scripts, and styles. So the only important properties are mappings. These define which properties, managed properties that needs to be retrieved from search and which are going to be used inside your templates. With scripts, you can define which script you want to load for rendering your templates, and the same goes for styles. So here you can define the styles, and everything will be done in the search web part itself. So loading it doesn't need to be, hasn't been done in the template itself. It's only in the web part. So the web part will do all the loading of your external scripts or styles. And once that's done, then you can render your element. Here you see it's a raw element or from React. you can also build it with JSX, but we need to create another compiler for that. So it's, as I said, it's just a raw or a proof of concept template. So the same goes for the carousel template. You see that I defined two script dependency or scripts with a script dependency. So you have jQuery and you have jQuery. So cycle is doing all the carousel rotation. So first you will load in the jQuery file. Once that is finished, then load the cycle file. So this is how my web art works. So feel free to port or to contribute part if you like it. And that was it for my web art on my side. Yes.
Thank you, Elio. Thank you. Great demo on the functionality and how it's actually built. And one thing what I wanted to kind of, obviously from a Microsoft perspective, this might be pretty obvious for everybody in the call, but let's get it recorded as well. So obviously, as part of this journey, when we move into the Sharepoint framework, we within the Microsoft, we are actually building new custom out-of-the-box web parts as well. None of those are yet available, and most likely by the time when we release, let's say, the new portal experiences and all of that, there will be no doubt an out-of-the-box native search web part. But in Elio's case, he's essentially already demonstrating how to do a really, really nice and flexible custom search web part before Microsoft has its own implemented. I think that's pretty much understandable for many of us in the call, but just wanted to pinpoint that it's the Sharepoint framework journey doesn't mean that you need to write all of the even out-of-the-box web parts from scratch. Obviously, there will be new stuff available sooner or later. Because it's the same framework what our engineers are using for future customizations, which is, by the way, great. And I know that Elio's web part is one of those examples which are actually being looked internally in engineering like, oh, this is superb. So showing nice techniques, showing nice functionalities, showing the templating model as well. There's a question from Russell. Will Microsoft release the source of their web parts when they are created? The answer is actually yes. We're looking into exposing or giving at least some of these web parts as an open source. It might be that we first release some of the web parts and not all of the web parts, but that's definitely the intention. We're also looking into sharing, for example, the Yeoman templates as an open source relatively soon. There will be other elements in the Sharepoint framework which will be open source. Not all of the things will be fully open source, at least when we start and when we move forward, but there will be more stuff available in the Sharepoint organization and GitHub sooner or later. Any other questions? We're quite soon running out of time. Great demos, by the way, Elio and Waldek, and I know that Waldek had to go because he needs to pick up his kid from kindergarten. So, any questions for Elio or anybody else? Will webhooks be for list data only? Great question. So when we start the webhooks dev preview, they will be only for list data. For the typical list data element, so attachment.add list item created, and it's only for asynchronous events. We are looking into expanding the webhooks capabilities also for list created event and all of site created events and all of those things. But we'll always have to start from somewhere, and we'll start with the list, the dev preview, and then we'll continue introducing additional webhooks as a journey going forward. Where's the best place to ask SPFx questions? So I would say that the best location would be right now is the issue list within the Sharepoint repo. And I'm going to paste that one in if it's anything related on the documentation, if it's a suggestion. Also, Stack Exchange is a good location for those questions, and our engineers are following up on the Stack Exchange questions. But to be fair, I think the issue list right now in the SPDev docs is the most active and most closely watched. And on the we need user created event, I think that might be coming at some point. I can't confirm that, and I can't promise that at this point because things have not been locked down. But it's understandable ask. An understandable event which most likely will come at some point. Now, the user-created event, though, isn't really for SharePoint. That's probably user-created somewhere else, or is the user-created or added to the site? That's a different event. But we'll start with the list events anyway, and then we'll start introducing additional things. And we'll start with the dev preview, which again means that it's not ready for production. But we want to have your input, your feedback. Does it work? What's broken? What doesn't work? If something is horrible, we can still adjust that before it goes global availability, or GA, like we say in Microsoft. But usually when we use those abbreviations, people can't follow up on what we're saying. Good. I think that's it. Patrick, any last words from your side?
Nope, some great demos. Great to see that stuff. Look forward, like I said before, if you guys want to do, if anybody out there wants to do a demo, just let us know. We're excited to get those out for the community. Thanks to everybody for your time.
Thank you, everybody. And the video will be available in YouTube within 12 or 24 hours. So check out the video channel or the YouTube channel whenever it's there. But thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Ilya and Waldek, one more time for the great demos, and hoping to see you next week. And we'll do definitely more social media advertisement for these weekly calls as well, so that we get more people in and more, let's say, active discussion on needed capabilities. But and one final reminder, tomorrow we will have a monthly master merge on the classic PnP stuff. I wouldn't say classic, the PnP stuff what we've been doing. So there will be a monthly communications, new samples, new functionalities for existing in production capabilities as well. So check out the dev.office.com/blogs for the announcements on that one. And dev.office.blogs/blogs announcements around the webhooks as well. But thank you, everybody, for joining, and hoping to see you next time as well. Cheers.
Thanks all.
Bye.